It just isn't, right? And if everybody could just swallow their pride and shrink a little bit, we'd all be fine. People aren't running businesses, they're running ego factories.
He came up in Chicago during the crack era and turned a hard start into something meaningful. Todd Dahn is the founder of Cannabis Genetics, a small batch cannabis brand out of Holyoke, Massachusetts. He built his 800 square foot grow on credit cards and friend loans without giving up any equity.
It's people that want to take statements that I say to the extreme. When I talk about marketing, when I don't understand why stores do this or things do that, the only people that get angry that are people that are doing the things that I don't understand, and I can't help their feelings when I speak things that I feel are true.
With 20 years producing music for independent artists around the world, Todd's always worked with authenticity and lifted up underrepresented communities. Now, every strain he grows helps fund a grant program that gives back with every sale.
Like the plant has helped me manage anxiety and all these other things that my head puts me through or my body puts me through, and I believe in that and for people.
This is craft cannabis with purpose.
My name is Todd Dahn. I'm the chief debt holder for Cannabis Genetics. We are the state's smallest cultivator. We run 800 square feet of canopy, 400 square feet at a time. And in that, I grow custom genetics. I sell in the legacy market, and we work through community to build value as opposed to being one.
So, all right, you already just unfolded a bunch of questions there that immediately triggered me. Chief debt officer.
Yes.
So what you're saying, basically, the honeymoon phase of cannabis is over for you right now, and you're really just focused on like surviving in the market. What do you mean by chief debt officer?
I feel really weird running around saying I'm a chief executive officer when it's just me.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge company with tons of buildings and hundreds of people working for me, and I'm not really hung up on titles. And it costs a lot of money to be in this.
Yes, it does.
So I'd rather make kind of a fun joke about that than try to pump myself up to be something more than really I just sit here and grow plants, right? And I'm in a bunch of debt doing it, and we're trying to get out of it to survive.
So, yeah, and that's the other thing. So, like, debt is obviously one way to fund it. Is that it's funded through debt, basically?
Yeah.
Or did you have a cash bankroll and then the company's going to pay you back eventually? Like, how did you structure it then?
So I was lucky enough because we're so small, and we purposely started small, so we had equity when we wanted to grow, right? That I was able to take money that I had from the music industry and the legacy market and other things and couple it with a couple of loans that we took out with some friends.
Okay.
And that would enable us to bootstrap fund what we're doing now.
Got it. So you were able to kind of like did you do like friends and family to help kind of start this thing? Or you were just like credit cards?
Oh, no, not, I mean, we've definitely used our credit cards to survive. But when we funded, I had a friend that did well in business that was interested in being in the cannabis space and loaned us some money. And then as we started really putting our budget together, we realized a little bit more. And I had another friend who was interested in that thankfully had done well where they had done. So we got 2 loans from them without any equity attached.
So no equity. That was my follow-up question. Was like, no equity. So it's just a loan. So it's a payback. You have like a term and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's good to have people, obviously you can kind of just like, hey, we're friends, I'm going to do this venture, I'm going to pay you back over time kind of thing. Was it some kind of like fancy kind of loan arrangement? What, like when we get to profitability kind of thing, and then that's when the trigger happens, when you start paying it back? Or
we structured it
beginning?
We structured it based off of cash flow. I don't like the term profitable because it means different things to different people. We always say cash positive. We were cash positive from day one because we had no staff. It was just me working there, and I just didn't take a salary. You know what I mean? But so we really worked to make sure that when we built it, we were able to start servicing all the things we had to service from the beginning. We gave ourselves a grace period of about a year before we really had to start servicing debt, but there's testing and rent and all the other things that go along with 100%. Being in business, right? And we wanted to make sure that we weren't putting ourselves in a position that we were always begging for favors from people, right, to stay in the business. Because I as the 4.5 years it took to get open, which is a whole nother conversation, right, I saw that happening. I would go to events, I would throw events, and I would see people talking to each other, and you would hear about people owing money and asking for favors and all of this and that. And I want to make sure that when we came to market, we did things differently so that we lived in a different space and we didn't have to deal with a lot of those things.
Yeah, and I think that's I've heard this from a few people, the people who maybe even they were like, hey, we got to get launched. It's, 2020. the green rush is happening, cannabis is blowing up in Massachusetts, we got to get to the market as quick as possible. And then lo and behold, it just takes a lot longer than you think sometimes, which we are going to dive into that story a little bit, because I do want to have a little bit of historical context for like kind of where you are today.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people thinking about like, hey, it took us 4 years or more to launch, can have that kind of those insights that weren't available back then. So now, like you just said, in your best interest, it's not to not overextend yourself and all this other stuff, because a lot of people back in the day, and I can definitely cite at least 3 companies off the top of my head, went way hard in the paint with like growth, and then they kind of burned all their vendors at some point because they're like, hey, we're taking all this money and we're going to cultivation now. And we're like, listen, you just had a store and you're not paying us, but you're building a whole cultivation. Yeah, but like, we'll get it back. Don't worry about it. And then I hear they have a second store that they're building. Like, okay, you're building a second store now. You have a cultivation, and your first store still owes us, thousands of dollars. Like, you sold the product like months ago at this point, and you haven't paid us for it. So it's like people overextending themselves and getting ahead of themselves. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, wait a second, maybe this isn't as cash flow positive as we would have liked.
I think a lot of people don't look to other states as a model as to how the industry is going to move forward. Like when we started in 2020, it was about $4,500 a pound wholesale, right? Mm-hmm. We were like, yo, we're going to do it, right? Yeah. And as we sat down and I started really doing the due diligence of how cannabis has worked in other states, and I saw how price compression worked, but I also saw how it spread across states and how Massachusetts is smaller. We have very centralized focus money. There are large swaths of people here who get a lot of identity by overpaying for things that other people can't, right? So there's a lot of things that save Massachusetts to make sure we don't become Michigan or California or some of these other things.
Were you looking to California a lot for this?
I was looking to California a lot because Michigan wasn't happening. I was looking at California and Colorado and just kind of extrapolating from that and from what I knew in the music industry and running restaurants and all these other things that I've done as to just how business works, right? And how people's tolerance for paying for things and what identity they get out of that. To really plan as to what we were doing, because we were originally going to launch 5,000 square feet. It's $4,000 a pound, right? Like, let's do it. And we scaled that all the way back down to 800 because it made sense to come in a market small enough to be nimble, to be able to adapt to whatever it was. Once we saw how long it was going to take, I mean, it took over a year just to get to the point of having an application approved. You know what I mean?
And you're in Holyoke?
Yeah, we're in Holyoke.
Yeah, and Holyoke's very friendly to cannabis, right?
Yeah, this was all the CCC side.
Yeah, it was the CCC side, not the city itself.
The city itself had a little bit of issues with our special permit that took a couple months longer than needed, but we had none of the issues like Haverhill or Newton or some of these other towns have really put people to the ringer.
It's an interesting case study with the APAs and stuff like that.
And again, like, to me, it's all due diligence. Why would you go and put a store in a city that you know is hostile to you?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that I don't understand what people do in this industry, because I feel like people are just like, oh, we're going to open a weed store, right? Exactly. That's just going to be great. And
that's why everybody ended up at industrial parks. They're like, that's the only property I could find that's zoned correctly. It's not super crazy expensive, but it is expensive because there's a green tax attached to it. So I'm going to go to the industrial park, and they're like 3 miles off a main street, and you're like, how is anybody ever going to find the shop? Right. And maybe they did in the very beginning, the first year, and your grand opening was huge, but then it dies away.
How does that happen over time, right? And then how does your retention happen over time? And what are you doing to make sure that people care to come 2 years later when there are 3 other things, right?
Right, exactly.
And how much effort did they put into looking at what other licenses are going through that town?
Yeah.
I've talked to people who are like, oh, we opened, we had no idea 2 people were open across the street. And it's like, but you just didn't look.
You didn't look.
It's all that information is public record, right? So I feel that there's a lot of that in this industry where people are just like, oh, we're just going to do this, right? Yeah. And it's one of the worst compliance industries I've ever worked. I've toured internationally. I've worked in banking. I've worked in restaurants. I've worked in a bunch of compliance industries. This is crazy, right? So to be your first industry, right, your first business, and then you're going to try and get into this, it just, there's a lot more thought that had to go into it.
Yeah, I always tell people it's like running a business on hard mode. It's like you go to you're playing a video game and you select, and it's just like easy, medium, hard, extreme, bloodbath, like all these other names to it, and then you're just like, I'm just going bloodbath right now.
Yeah, we're like that's full scale Mortal Kombat. Yeah,
exactly, Mortal Kombat reference. So from my perspective, I'm always trying to guide people, obviously, to stay small in the beginning, especially because I come from the tech world, which is MVP, right? Yeah. Minimum viable product. We just have to get something out there. If people like it, we can expand.
I had a
streaming app. If they don't like it, then you had a streaming app. Oh, what's that called?
It was called Platforms. So we were an aggregator for streaming services.
Okay, like SoundCloud and stuff like that?
Yeah. So this was right before Spotify blew up. It was SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and AudioMac. And we ran an MVP. We were partially funded. We ran for about 2.5 years. And I gloriously crashed that into the ground by putting my ego ahead of what I should have been listening to. You know what I mean? And that's one of the...
Like you've learned some lessons.
Oh, 100%. I mean, working in the music industry for 30 years, you think cannabis is crazy. Like, the music industry is even worse because there are no rules. They can just do whatever
the fuck
they want to. Yeah, it's very cutthroat. And the odds of getting a record deal are so tiny. So I used to help independent artists compete against major labels and teach them how to build brands and create generational wealth through publishing and all these other things. So it was fun to come into cannabis because it's very similar. There's so many interpretations of how everything works. There's so many ways to do things.
Yeah.
And if you look at a CD and you look at pot, right, it's kind of the same thing. They all look the same from the outside. The difference is in the consumption, right? The difference is in the experience. What the artist does with that music leads you to gravitate to that artist. Mm-hmm. How cannabis makes you feel when you smoke it gravitates you to those strains or terpenes or however they choose to phrase what they're looking for.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So yeah, let's step back. So your background, you've mentioned you even banking. I didn't realize that part. Banking, music, restaurants.
Yeah, I worked for the Illinois Bankers Association for 2 years in the 90s when they passed a law to let banks sell insurance. And I did branding and storytelling for them.
Mm. Have you always, is that your background? Will you always kind of like have that kind of branding aspect to
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the legacy market since 86.
Okay.
So I was selling through the crack era. So you had to, I mean, when you see movies and they talk about, them branding dope and things with different names, like that's a real thing. We did that. We created brands for all the things that we did.
Like, give me an example. Like, what kind of brands do you remember from back then?
There's been Barack Obama dope. There's been Bill Clinton dope. I mean, people come up with all different names just to differentiate itself, but you're always looking to stand out because there's 50 people on the block.
Right.
I come from a very urban area.
Where?
I come from Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Right, in the 70s and 80s. Right, so I started Legacy Market in 86 when I was 13. And in that area, we lived in basically the projects, right? You sold dope on the corner with a gun in your pocket. I didn't have this cannabis experience of everybody coming over and smoking bongs. And we grow in our backyard and there's car shows and all this shit. Like, it was what we did to survive, right? It was what people killed each other for, right? So for me, coming out of that, knowing that, moving from that into sales, which is what I got into after that, we were always in sales. Like when you're on the corner trying to tell somebody to buy something that you have over somebody else, you've got to have game, you got to be able to talk, you got to be able to think on your feet.
Did you get some trouble or anything like that? Or is that when you moved on with that lifestyle or no? I
mean, I moved on from that lifestyle ages ago, but when I was in it, I spent 3 years in prison before that. I was 19 years old.
Wow. What you got, like, raid, a bust or something like that?
No, for a variety of things. I actually never went to jail for weed. I went to jail for cocaine. I went to jail for assault. I went to jail for robbing cars and breaking into houses and other things associated with it. But like, we never actually got
as a teenager.
Yeah.
As a teenager. But that's Buffalo, where you grew up. That's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a steel town, right? In the steel industry, and the Great Lakes collapsed in the 50s and 60s. So when the 70s came around, we were one of the poorest parts of the country at that point.
Right. So all the kids of that generation were growing up in poverty.
Yeah. I mean, when the crack era came and dope flooded the city and took over from what heroin was in the 70s, right? Like that's, you either with that or part of that, right? Like, and I didn't like to be a victim of things, so I became a perpetrator of things.
Right. Was there a third option?
I mean,
were there kids who were like, I'm going to stay, like,
there's always a third option. It just didn't feel like
anybody in that generation, like, make it out without
most of my friends that I grew up with have passed. Like most of my close friends that I did those things, like I have school friends and stuff that are around, but the people that I was involved in that stuff, most of those people have passed.
That's wild. So was the decision to go out of that lifestyle because of the jail?
Or I got sent from Buffalo to California to do some work for a sales company that I was working for. And that kind of pushed me into a new environment with people.
Okay.
And got me away from a lot of the things that I was doing there. Got me off of cocaine and all the other things that I was associated with there. But a lot of why I got involved in it and why I went so hard with it is I was a gay kid in the 70s. You know what I mean? Like there was no.
Were you out at that point?
No, I didn't even. I barely accepted it to myself when I was 14 and 15, right? But like in the 80s at this point, it was very, very different than now. I'm very thankful for what the kids have nowadays because there was no RuPaul's Drag Race. There was no gay alliances in high school. There was none of that, right?
There's no pride flags around town.
There were pride parades once a year, but we didn't really have one in Buffalo, and like I could never go to it, right? Where I come from, like that isn't something that you can be, right? And there were no role models. Like the only two people I knew that were gay were Rock Hudson because he got AIDS, right? When I was in 8th grade, and Billy Crystal played a flamboyant character on the show called Soap. And then there was Robin Williams in The Life According to Garp, right? So you have all these examples of what gayness is, but it's always these extreme examples.
Well, it wasn't around the corner either. It was on TV.
It was on TV.
Like
it was never, and it was never something that I emulated to be. I didn't want to be a woman. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't, and I don't knock anybody that's their thing, right? But that wasn't what I emulated to be. So there was a big disconnect with who I thought I was and who I could be because there was no example of that for me. Right. That's why I'm very vocal about it now. I'm very, very vocal about who I am. Right. Because people should be able to see themselves in other people. Yeah. And there was none of that for me. So I instead of doing what other people do, like going into books or anything, I just chose violence. Because to me it was easier to, and I attempted through my life 3 or 4 times, like there was a lot of things that went along with it, but it was easier to do that because it numbed the pain and it could potentially stop the pain if something were to happen. Exactly. So it's the acceptance that you're struggling with. Oh, 100%. You saw it and you were like, there's something there, but I can't. I don't know the vocabulary for it. There's no vocabulary in the world, right? There was none of this great conversation that happens nowadays, right? So for me, it was a really hard thing to figure out, and moving to California and getting me into a new environment gave me space to understand that. And then moving to Chicago in my early 20s when I came out and all these other things really gave me a new opportunity to start a new life again. Right. And was that still the 80s or the 90s now? I moved to Chicago in 94. Okay. Yeah. So you were doing sales with a sales company in California. You kind of got clean with your ways, and then you went to Chicago for another sales branding? So I was running a company at the time that sold sports memorabilia as an investment like stocks or bonds. So Shaq had just hit the scene in the early 90s, right? We had a friend in Southern California that ran Upper Deck for all of Southern California. So we had access to all this merch. Yeah. So me and a buddy get leads from Dun & Bradstreet, and we call high-risk investors, and we would sell them signed Shaquille O'Neal basketballs and sneakers and Bo Jackson stuff and all this stuff as high-risk investments. Yeah, exactly. Be like, hey, you could own this thing. It may have a really big return on it, but that's what the risk is. Sports memorabilia was just exploding again because Bo Jackson and Shaq and all these people made it exciting. Michael Jordan, everybody made it exciting again. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where my Bo Jackson rookie card is, but I still have it. The classic Topps Bo Jackson rookie card. I still have that somewhere. I'm sure I do. So yeah, I'm coming up with that generation. I was born in '78, but like when I went through the '80s, it was all about. My dad would come home sometimes from work, and he worked for the phone company. He was like one of those lifetimers. With the phone company. He'd come home, and it was like. One time he came home with an entire case of like baseball cards or whatever, and my brother and I just ripped through them super quick and like, that's amazing, we got some cool cards and whatever. And then we, the next day we're like, when he came home from work, we're like, where's the baseball cards again? We were like expecting him every day to come home with like a case of baseball cards, right? And it was a huge thing for us back then. So I remember those specific sports memorabilia stuff vividly as part of my childhood. That's what the 80s was to me. A lot of the 80s was to me. Me and my friends were always just collecting baseball cards. And yeah, it was comic books, baseball cards, like all that stuff. That was my first company, actually. Nice. Company. Yeah, I sold baseball cards and sports memorabilia out of my garage, basically. In Massachusetts, it's like a Cape-style ranch. I don't know if anybody's going to get this reference. It's just a different generation, I think. But it was called the Breezeway. Okay. It was the part of the house that connected the house to the garage. Right, and it was kind of open. Yeah. So it was called the Breezeway, right? And so I sold my baseball cards. I put a sign out front. I was probably like 10, 11 maybe. Put a sign out front on my street, which is not like a lot of cars going down this street. But I actually ended up getting like 1 or 2 people to come through and like look around. And I think the shock on people's faces when they opened it up, there's like an 11-year-old kid being like, hey, welcome to my baseball card store. Right. It's like, what do I do here? And they just like kind of like turned around and like walked out. But yeah, you got to try things. You don't know. Yeah. Better than a lemonade stand.
Well, yeah, the lemonade stand was classic. I don't count that as my first business still. But yeah, lemonade stand probably predated that one. But baseball card store was actually like a legitimate, like, my grandfather and I would work on these cases, like wooden cases to put the baseball cards in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was an engineer. And so, like, for me, it was always just like spending time in New Hampshire where they lived in the basement with like working with my grandfather, like building these wooden cases from a baseball card store.
Okay, yeah.
So I got all these connections right here, right? And but some of my fondest memories with all those, trading cards and stuff like that. And you were like, you're now taking this and you're like, hey, high risk investors, and that's crazy. So DNB, Dun & Bradstreet, would just sell you lists of high risk investors.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they do it anymore, but at the time, telemarketing agencies could reach out to them and get different leads with different criteria for it all the time.
Right.
So one of the things that I had done for years, which is what took me out to California, is I ran telemarketing companies with people. In the 80s, and I told you not to give out your credit card over the phone. It was a scam. That's what we did. Right?
Wow, you're that guy.
We all were that guy at that point. But like, so that's what took me to California. And then I got that transitioned into calling on people for just more money.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to
bigger checks.
Bigger checks so I could work less and hang out more. I was like 23. Like,
right, exactly.
And when I was 22 on paper, I did $210,000 in 1992. Which is the equivalent of like, I don't know, 600 grand nowadays.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
you're rolling it.
We were having fun. Right. You know what I mean? So we just went and tried things. You know what I mean? Because
were you consuming cannabis at the time? Or were you
I've been consuming cannabis. Other than when I was on parole, I've consumed cannabis nonstop since I was 13 years old.
Wow. So after Chicago, where did that take you?
I was in Chicago for 25 years until I came out here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why Massachusetts of all places? Chicago is pretty cool. I like Chicago. I lived there for like a summer.
Chicago is a great place for me. What I needed at the time when I moved there, it became a very depressing place for me over time. I just spent enough time there. Chicago is soul crushing financially, and I'll give you a couple of examples. A parking ticket is $250, and they hand them out like Pez candy.
Yeah.
All of the street signs are confusing, so they can trick you. They have red light cameras on every red light. That's $200, right? Yeah. So like they nickel and dime you to the point that it's hard to be there. It's actually cheaper for me to live here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know there's Taxachusetts, but that's a name from the 80s, right? Like everybody's caught up in past Massachusetts now in taxes.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah. Like Illinois has the highest taxes in the country.
I'm so tuned into Massachusetts again. I also did a stint in New York City for quite a long time. So now that I'm back in Massachusetts, I still think of Taxachusetts because every time my tax bill comes out for excise taxes, whether it's for the company or for my home or something like that, I'm like, these guys are always trying to get after me. But that's just a grumpy old man who doesn't want to pay too much in taxes.
Well, and also, like, not for nothing, but they give healthcare in this state.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like, I'll pay every tax I have to because I have HIV, right? So, like, I've lived without health care, and the federal government paying for the $10,000, $15,000 a month for my medicine for 20 years.
Right.
Coming here and knowing that I had a safety net, right? Like, if I ever needed it,
right,
it's different. You don't have that in any other state. Everybody has health insurance here.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that people really don't, they always talk about the taxes, but you have to look at what you get back for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like Chicago, another reason we can live there, the city's $2 billion in debt, bro.
Yeah.
So all they want to do is tax you to get you know what I mean? So
or nickel and dime you.
Yeah. City sticker, $200 just to drive in the city.
Yeah.
So like, I really wanted to get back to the East Coast because I wanted to come back to where I come from. I really, at that point in my life, wanted to be back in the environment with the mentality of people that I agree with and the hustle that comes along with it and all of that. I'm too old to live in New York. I'm not working that hard to live in a closet.
It's a different grind.
When I was in my 20s, it was fun. Yeah. I'm 52 years old, man. I can't do that. You know what I mean?
So, I mean, I'm not going to gloss this over because everybody's going to be curious. You're HIV positive.
Yes.
And I have definitely met people who have been HIV positive. Now, is that like, is it something you constantly like think about, live with kind of thing? Or it just...
The medicine is so good nowadays, it's like diabetes. Right? And I'm not advocating to get it, right? But like the medicine makes it so that as long as the side effects aren't too bad and you find a medicine that works for you with your side effects, it's just to manage the Spanish care now.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
I'm probably healthier now than I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
As I said, with this big belly right now, right? But I mean, since I've gotten sick and my mama and both my brothers have passed and things, like as time goes on, I get older, I've taken my health more seriously because things have happened to me, because I'm watching things happen to people around me.
Exactly.
And I realize I'm not 25 anymore.
Right.
And I can't eat, 6 Big Macs in a day. You know what I mean? and all these other things. Yeah, I have to take care of myself. And part of why I got into cannabis, because if I want to make money, there's a ton of other things I could have done to make a ton more money, right? With a lot less headache. But I really believe in what the plant brings to people, right? Like the plant has helped me manage anxiety and all these other things that my head puts me through or my body puts me through. And I believe in that and for people, right? So that is part of the last bit of my time here, and the legacy that I want to leave is that after all the crazy shit that I've done, I actually left some good, and we did some good for people, and we put people on a path that helped themselves.
Yeah, more leaving them positive.
100%.
Leaving the world better than when you came into it.
Or at least a little piece of it. You know what I mean? Like, none of us can make the whole world better, but if I can make just a couple people's lives better, like, it's always been my goal in music. I didn't want to be rich. I went to work at a label. I wanted to help people. We helped over 100 people create generational wealth through their music.
Yeah, we're going to get to the music in a second, but it seems like, so do you have any family members alive still?
Aunts, uncles, cousins, but my immediate family is all passed.
Wow, that's wild. So does it, like, now you're in Massachusetts, you've been here for how many years?
7.5.
7.5 years. Oh, it's like kind of like how long I've been here for. I moved 2017.
Yeah, same.
2017. I mean, do you feel like lonely?
I miss my mom.
Yeah.
Because of the advice she would give, because she knows me better than anybody, right? So she could be honest in a way that nobody else could be, right? Yeah. The f*** is wrong with you, and slap me over the phone and I would come on it. But I have a wonderful family here. I was married for a long time. I was in a relationship for 15 years. My ex-husband is my business partner right now. We still have a wonderful friendship. I have a great chosen family here of friends and people that support me. So I don't feel lonely, but I do feel the loss, if that makes sense, right? There are times that I miss my mom or I miss my brothers, right? But like, I thankfully have a support system here that helps you through that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think one of the things that I often think about when your name comes up is I feel like you're often misunderstood in the market. Is there one obvious thing that like people always like that you would want to set straight, or something that people always were like misinterpreting or something like that? Like,
not really, because I don't give a f***. Quite honestly, like, I really don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to find a place that works for me regardless of what people have to say about me or whatever people have to do with me.
Right.
I've always done that my whole life, and I will continue to do that my whole life. And we do a good job at what we do. We have great intent, and we will find people that work with that, and everybody else, like, they can go to whatever the f*** they want to do.
Right. That was actually one of my mother's lessons to me when I was a kid. She was just like, don't listen to anybody else. Like, don't care what anybody else is doing. Focus on your own things. Just stay focused.
I've been so different for so long.
Don't care what anybody tells
that
about you.
I just have to accept it, right? And for me to be healthy with it, it's like, and I do things differently purposely because I watch all these people struggle. So why the f*** would I want to do what all these other people are doing when I'm watching them fail?
Right.
When I know that there's a better way.
Right.
So
that's what I was going to say, because that was where I was going with this. It's kind of like social media can be very polarizing, and everybody's a keyboard warrior. So everybody can just say whatever they want and like have no repercussions kind of for it. Do you ever get pushback and stuff like that? Because you're out there in social media a lot too.
I do. There's a kid right now who wrote a battle rap about me not too long ago.
Battle rap.
That's trying to pass around this post that I made where I was like, thank you for all the handsome men in Massachusetts market. You know what I mean? And I guess he's mailed this to CEOs trying to get me canceled and all this, right? And it's like, if you can't understand the difference between how women live in terror of men and men don't live in terror of gay men, then I can't really have an honest conversation with you. So it's always things like that. It's people that want to take statements that I say to the extreme. When I talk about marketing and where I don't understand why stores do this or things do that, the only people that get angry that are people that are doing the things that I don't understand, and I can't help their feelings when I speak things that I feel are true, right? When I say, why are you not using community? Why are you doing business in communities you don't understand? Why are you opening stores in communities you don't belong to?
Right.
Why are you assuming because of the color of skin of people they can only spend $10 on an eighth? Like, why are all these assumptions to the state happening?
Right.
Why? And then people get angry, but I can't help that. You know what I mean? Because all I'm doing is asking honest questions. And I really would like to know, because you can't tell me that the state is so poor that all we can do is send $8 eighths when the average cost of housing and everything else here is high, and people are paying it, right?
Are affording it.
And they're not, and there are people who are struggling, right? I don't ever want to take that away, but people are opening stores in neighborhoods, watching people with $500 sneakers, $60,000 cars come in and saying, yo, they can only spend $10 on cannabis, right?
Right.
So I looked, in the 4 years that I was getting licensed, I watched the market, because that's what we did in music. We watch what other people do to see what works and what doesn't work, right? And I watched people do everything other than work with their community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now everybody's shutting down. Everybody can't understand. Well, you know, when you sell a $10, yeah,
like you just didn't do it right.
And how much profit do you make off of a $10 eighth? And how many of those you have to sell to make your rent, right?
I think a lot of people don't understand the financial side of it, right? They just can't do the numbers, because they, again, whether for better or for worse, there was a green rush at one point, but the green rush was really funded by external money.
Yeah.
And they could just pump up things. And now we're seeing the effects of, you know, very large MSOs who now have to like scrape together, like, and go into receivership or whatever, because they blew through a ton of money, built these crazy fancy facilities for $20 million, hired 1,500 people. And then, and that's not even an exaggeration. You know, there's a company that had 1,500 people at one point under one company in Massachusetts. And then now they're doing mass layoffs constantly. And it's just like, it's not a good look. And they think to themselves, well, I guess we just have to make the cheapest weed possible.
Yeah. And like, there's so many, and I say this in all honesty, if we took 30% of the canopy away from the market, this market would correct itself in 6 months easily.
30%, you think? Is the
40% maybe?
Yeah.
Because the only reason we're in a race to the bottom is because people out here selling $300 pounds, because they're like, oh, I'd rather sell that than nothing, right? And without any understanding of what that does to an overall market, because a lot of people didn't do business before this.
Right.
Outside of music, I've never met more first-time business owners than I have in cannabis.
Well, music does have that parallel, because it's just like, I'm an artist.
Oh, I can just sell records.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? They don't understand the legalities of publishing.
Rapper.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there's a business behind it. Yeah. There's money that moves around.
And you have to be savvy, because people get taken advantage of really easily. Let's actually skip to music real quick. So, like, how'd you get into music? You just love music and you're like, hey, I want to be an AR or something like that? Or
so I played music as a kid, you know what I mean? And I played instruments when I was young. I played drums and clarinet and stuff like that. And when I was living in Southern California, my roommate at the time played bass guitar in a bunch of bands just for fun, right? And we would smoke weed, and he would tell me about it, and I would get on his bass guitar and just kind of f*** around with it and always break the strings and f*** it up, because I don't know what the fuck I was slapping it like George Clinton, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just having fun. And finally he got tired of it. He's like, f*** this. He's like, go buy something and quit up my thing. Right. So he showed me how to buy a keyboard with a sampler and a drum machine. Oh, nice. And I just was like, oh, this is 91, nice. Right?
It's a great year for boom bap and stuff like
Cypress Hill, I just dropped Black Sunday, you know what I mean? Like, we were really living, sampling was really just kind of getting figured out. Mm-hmm. So I had an ESR, EPS 16 Plus, and a little Boss drum machine. And he taught me how to sample and do arrangements, and I just kind of ran with it from there.
Wow. So were you trying to be an artist yourself at that point, or you're just like, hey, this is not my...
So when I started, I think everybody wanted to be a rapper. Right. I learned very quickly that no.
So that's not you?
No. Number one, I don't want to be in front of people like that.
Right.
I do not. I have incredible stage fright, so that ruins all of that for me. At the time, it wasn't cool to be a white rapper. Mm. It was very hard, and I didn't sound in a way that I felt was cool when I heard myself back. So I was like,
were there any white rappers out there besides Beastie Boys? Was Vanilla Ice out at that point?
The Vanilla Ice had just come out, which had really ruined the white rapper thing. I think. Kid Rock had just dropped his first rap record, like back before he turned into all the things that he became, called Yodeling in the Valley, about...
Never heard that.
Yeah, he had a couple of deals in New York in the early days before he turned into what he turned into. But it was just fun, right? And when I moved to Chicago, I got involved. One of the guys I met worked at a bar, and I met a couple of kids that rapped, and they were like, oh, you make beats, you know what I mean? And it just kind of grew from that. And then I was like, oh, I have fun with this. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I can do this. And because I worked for independent artists, I always had other jobs. I helped the Illinois Bankers Association. I ran restaurants and bars for people. I've done a variety of other things. I did business process reengineering for people. So there's always ways that I could take the skill set from music and understanding how that works and do other things. Navtech, which owned MapQuest, I helped their parent company start their internal recruiting department, and then ran international recruiting for them. So we recruited from India and China a lot. So I did compliance with that. So that's why I'm so angry with the CCC, because I've done compliance. I know what compliance language is supposed to look like. I've worked on immigration. I've worked on money from touring. I've worked on all these different things, and this is not compliance. This is just guidelines.
Yeah. Okay. We could dive into that in a second. Just finish off the music segment, though. Like, where did it end up going?
So, over the 25 years in Chicago, I ended up running a full service company for people where we did everything a label would do for an independent artist.
Okay.
So I owned and ran a recording studio for 20 years. I ran my own record label. I'm a songwriter. I write music. I'm a producer. I'm a live engineer. I'm a studio engineer. We did branding, we did merchandising, we did engagement strategies, we did publishing, we did everything that a record label would do. We helped them develop fan clubs, we helped them do all these things. So that's why when I came into this, I knew I could take those skills and move them over here, because from a neuroscience standpoint, there is it's like high 80s, low 90% similarity to the dopamine that your brain gets from hearing music, your favorite music, and from cannabis.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's chemically very much the same, right? Yeah. So your brain...
What's the chemical? Is that dopamine?
Dopamine and serotonin.
Yeah,
right? So when we're talking about marketing, people that really understand marketing understands it's psychology. It has nothing to do with anything other than the manipulation of emotions to get people to do what you want.
Right.
So if you understand what they're chasing from a brain chemistry standpoint, you can understand how to manipulate them, right? They're chasing these things. So we know what we can do to get people to listen to music. You create fan clubs, you create engagements, you create community, you give them a reason to support this person over other people besides the talent. So we just brought that here. That's why we do all the things we do here so differently than other people, because I've done them successfully for 30 years. For tons of people.
Exactly.
And that's why I don't care if people like it or don't. I don't care because I know it works.
Right. But at the music side, like, you were there, that's a longer stint than I thought you were talking about. I thought you said 4 years.
No, I was 30 years. 30 total years. Yeah.
So in those 30 years, you must have seen crazy artists come through and all this other stuff. And like studios, like you probably saw a bunch of people come through the studio that were pretty cool.
Yeah, I never worked with a bunch of famous people because we always worked on the independent side because it was rewarding.
Right.
But I knew Kanye before Kanye was Kanye.
Well, Chicago too.
Yeah, I knew No ID. We met a bunch of people that way. I worked in CRC Studios, which is still kind of there, but my engineer was R. Kelly's engineer, did Janet Jackson, did all those things. So we would meet people that way. I would go to New York all the time for shows and networking and stuff. So we'd meet people that way. But I focused my career on the independent artists because it was more fulfilling to me. And it was honestly easier because they didn't come with the ego of an established artist.
Did you get opportunities to work with bigger artists and you were just like, we're good here, I'm going to work in
from a producer standpoint? I did.
Yeah.
And I've consulted for B. Dolan, who's relatively famous. He tours with Rhyme Sayers and all those guys. So as time went on, we worked with larger independent artists, but I never had any want or desire to get into the label system.
Got it. Okay.
It just didn't make sense.
Right.
And honestly, even when I started, I always joke about this, but outside of the fact that I couldn't rap, when you look at the money, right, how money works in the music industry, the artist is the last person to get paid.
Yeah, the very bottom.
The very bottom, whatever's left after everybody else. And I wanted this to be a career, right? So I was like, I need to learn to do the things that get paid. And then I put 26 albums out on my own. So I am an artist. I've toured, I've done all these things, but I didn't need to do that to make money.
Right.
I did all the other things to make money.
You made money and then you could just do your art for with no pressure even at that point. So where does the producer kind of fall on that chart? Do they get paid first?
Producer gets paid right away.
That's the best position.
Yeah.
First position.
Especially if you're talking about, and even independent labels back then, producers got paid. Back then I'd get, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for a track, which, in the 90s and early 2000s was pretty decent. You do 3 or 4 of those a month, you can pay your bills and then, go out and do other things. So I was always lucky enough that I could be nimble enough to learn things to then be able to go and help people.
Do you still like dabble a little bit in music?
So that's what part of the grant program is for. So I retired.
Program.
So all of our strains, and we'll dive deeper into this in a minute, but all of our strains give a grant to an artist or an organization in the Massachusetts market so that all of my revenue leads with intent. I can continue to give support to communities that have always supported me. But that allows me to stay in touch with some of the music people. The first community engagement we did through Canalive is I wrote a play. Me and a group of friends of mine wrote a musical called Come to Pass. We got a grant from the Boston Foundation and put it out in 2022. And then again in 2023. And Come to Pass is about how the founding principles of America have failed women of color and then continue to do so today. So me, Brandy Blaze, Dutch Bell, Tim Hall, Mo Pope, Actionmentals, Amanda Shea, all got together and I wrote the music and they wrote the words because it's not my place to tell that story. But we wrote a 45-minute musical. We ran it for a week at the Strand. We actually just submitted it to Company One for them to expand on it next year and then send it off to New York. So I'm still finding ways to dabble, but like full-time music, I retired when COVID hit.
Okay.
We were touring probably 4 to 5 months out of the year at that point, which was a lot of what we did and a lot of fun.
Seems like a grind, though. You're saying it was fun? It's fun while you were doing it, but looking back, maybe?
So I toured with people who were adults, like when Still Gold's a little younger than me. They're in their 30s and 40s. You know what I mean? So like I couldn't go on tour with a 21-year-old because that's
different level.
Yeah. No, I want to tour with people who go to bed after a show. You know what I mean? People who are too old to go out and be crazy.
Right.
So like me and Dutch Bell did the UK twice. I took Still Gold to the UK, Germany, and France. We've done stuff all over the country. So when that stopped, and I knew it would never come back the way it was after the change of what COVID did and the economy and all of that, I knew it was time for me to retire. I had achieved everything I'd wanted to achieve in the music industry. I had helped a ton of people. I had done all the things I want to do musically. It was just a really good place to say this is it.
So then that's when the transition happened to cannabis, right?
Yes.
At the same time?
So literally I was sitting at home like a week after I'd made the announcement, and I'm scrolling through my Google feed, and there were 3 articles back to back. And I'm not a religious person, but I always joke, like, my mama came and told me this, right?
Right.
And the first article is Holyoke is incredible cannabis friendly, and it was the old mayor who's now in P-Town, right, was the mayor then. And they had more licenses than anybody in the state, and they're great, they're easy to work with, da-da-da-da-da. Right underneath that was an article about how Massachusetts has just launched a micro-business license, and they're first in the country and all this. It's for regular people, it's cheap, liars. Like, all this and then the third article right underneath it was how Holyoke owns its own power company.
That's right.
They're municipal power. They own a hydroelectric dam, and the energy is like 40% cheaper than anywhere else in the state.
Yep.
So I was like, at the time, my husband, Marco, and I said, well, we're taking this thing we do over here, and we're moving this over here now because this is the future. This is the future. Yeah. And at the time, I had just gotten a dog, Miss Micah, and Sohan from MCR lived around the corner from me, and he had just gotten a dog. So him and I had just met in the field behind the church in our neighborhood.
Yep.
And he's like, oh yeah, I work for MCR. So I immediately went to him. I was like, all right, tell me, what's pot going for? How does this work? So him and I sat down and had like a 3-hour conversation. Wow. And he talked to me through how the industry's going at that point.
So that's great.
Sohan's an amazing. I will love Sohan forever. Like him and his family. He's got 2 wonderful daughters now, beautiful children. His dog still comes over to visit every now and then. You know what I mean? So we'll see each other much less because he's moved into a larger house now, but he still comes by and hangs out.
In Holyoke?
No, I live in Somerville.
I was going to say, because he works for MCR, which is not
It's in Framingham, and I think he's in Newton or something like that now. But he used to live on the street behind me in Somerville. So yeah, I drive to Holyoke back and forth every day.
Every day?
Yeah.
How long's that trip?
About 2 hours each way.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's dedication. Holyoke obviously makes sense for some reasons, obviously, like you just stated. I'm so grateful and privileged in a sense that I live in the same town because I have a 10-minute commute.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have it any other way. I started with the whole comfort level thing. I like to be comfortable.
Well, like living in Chicago for a long time, everything is an hour away.
True. Yeah.
Chicago is 27 miles from
It's
tip
a
to tip.
big city.
Chicago could go from Boston all the way up to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Right. So where everything's a town here, everything's a neighborhood in Chicago.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? So it took me a long time to adjust for people being like 10 minutes is a long drive here.
Yeah.
Because it's from one end of your town to the other. Like, why would you drive anywhere else? Right. So for me, the drive isn't that bad. And I do a lot of work. Like, I can make phone calls, all the things I can't do at the facility.
Right.
Because once I get to the facility, it's the plants, the packaging, all this other stuff.
Like earbuds in, whatever. And you're like,
whatever we have to do at that moment, right? So I can't not work with the plants to take meetings because the plants still have to be cared for because it's just me, right? I have one part-time worker that comes in time to time, but I run the whole facility by myself. I do all the plant maintenance, all the trimming,
it's
everything.
just you.
Yeah.
Are you paying yourself yet?
No.
You're not even paying. So
No, I paid them.
Oh,
right.
part-time.
So Audrey used to work for me part-time. A lot of people know Audrey on LinkedIn. She's gone on to open her own cafe. So it's just me again, right? And Marco will come out from time to time, but he has a day job that pays our bills. So, you know what I mean? Like he'll come out and help from time to time, but we don't have a staff.
Right.
You know what I mean? We don't have a bunch of people yet. Like we're getting there, but I had to service that. We had to make sure we could pay our bills. And you know, we're tiny. Oh yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because every
like
month
your
we grow
cannabis
better. We just brought Kyle Hamilton on as a full-time salesperson. So we have our first internal full-time salesperson.
You're doing sales also, but
I was Fitzcannon was helping. I've had a couple other people help externally. Adam Hubeler helped for a little bit. Roz helped for a little bit before she went to boutique. So I've had help, right? But when it comes to like working with the plants and all this stuff, it's just me.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but that's why we started so small when we realized that we weren't going to do $4,000 a pound, right? We had to be cash positive.
Right.
And we had to do that by making something that I can manage. So we basically built what I had from the legacy world because I knew I could handle that.
You know you can handle that cannabis by yourself. Right.
I knew I could do enough work to we wouldn't have problems, right? It's not perfect. I don't do enough defoliation. Some people say, and everybody has opinions, right? But like it works enough that we can make it. We grow great weed.
Right.
We pass all of our tests. We don't have any issues. So like we're moving through all that stuff to get.
Right. And is your plan to expand at some point?
We're working on that now.
Okay. Is that the building that you're in have like a room next door you could just like bust open or no?
No, if we expand, we'll probably try to get our own building.
Yeah.
It's just easier at this point with issues in buildings and older buildings and all this kind of stuff just to make sure that we have control of the situation fully. And then like it's a tax issue too and a revenue issue, right? Like why at this point, if I'm going to pay double my rent, it's Holyoke. I can just buy a building for next to nothing, right? So like I really try to look at things that way because we have to manage the cash flow in a way that makes sense.
Would you ever get to the size where you'd have to move to Holyoke?
No, because I would hire somebody to do that.
At that point, done like a manager, like facilities manager or whatever you want to call him, production manager or whatever, harvest manager.
I mean, yeah, and I'm not really big on titles. Like, if we expand, there'll be some more people that come in for cultivation, and everybody will do everything. You know what I mean? Like, I still do everything.
Right.
There would never be a point that I wouldn't come in there and still work because I enjoy it.
Right.
I like touching the plants. I like seeing them. It makes me happy. I don't like being in the hot ass room because I don't like being warm, right? But I do enjoy it. I never thought I would enjoy gardening like this because I used to hate it when my mama used to make me go out and weed and all this stuff. But I do. I get a kick out of going in there and seeing the ladies doing well and seeing the leaves standing up and you know what I mean, running through and talking to them and doing all the goofy shit that I do to get through the day. Because,
what do you do? So some goofy stuff you do? Do you like play music and stuff like that for the plants and all that, or no?
I try to do it, but the can fans and the DHU and everything else is so loud that like I don't feel like the music actually makes a difference.
But
right?
you do play music. Sometimes
I play music in my earbuds.
Yeah.
I had put speakers in there once for a couple of days just to see, right? And I was like, yo, there's no way this, because everybody's like the bass frequency helps because it's the science of the frequency, not actually the music. But with all the other noise, there is no way that you can't hear it. So
that's what I was thinking, and it's just like, but I mean, to be now I'm going to nerd out for a second, but as probably as you've done so much engineering and sound, like that bass waves, obviously the longer waves and stuff like that can actually potentially penetrate and stuff like that. And especially, this is something I nerd out about all the time because I used to build systems, we call them systems back in the day, and I remember putting together all these systems, stuff like that, but you learn stuff as you're building, car systems that the ear can only hear down to like 35 hertz or whatever. So anything below that you can't hear, but bass drivers can go below that. And so you could literally not hear anything, but your whole car is shaking.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So,
That's
but I
what
do
the
think...
bazookas were.
Bazookas, that's right.
Yeah.
He had a bazooka. I remember my buddy's 84, 85 Mustang 5.0 convertible. He had a bazooka in the back of that thing. But I built boxes too, because I just happened to be handy with wood and stuff like that. So I'd build my own enclosures and stuff. But then I remember ripping apart cars and running wires and 8-gauge wires or size of my pinky or something like that in thickness. And it's crazy, like the stuff we would go through to like just get so much more amperage into these systems, wattage into these systems. That's kind of probably one of the first times where I actually thought to myself, wow, I kind of like electronics and like all that stuff, you know what I mean? And that's kind of eventually how I got into computers, I guess. But not to go too far off a sidetrack, but I do hear about these sometimes stories in cultivation rooms where just like, oh yeah, I play like Bach or something like that.
They've proven it in tomatoes.
Oh, is that what
There's been studies that done with tomatoes that certain frequencies have I believe it was like not fully, but they're pretty positive that they made the tomatoes riper.
Well, that's why it's like I always think about what's real science versus bro science, whatever, because it's so.
This was peer reviewed in a university.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm sure you would probably back something up with actual science, but I just think about like all the people who are claiming like I've been a master grower for 20 years and all this other stuff, and then they come to the facilities and now it's a different kind of environment in a sense.
Yep.
Although it seems like you've kind of catered the environment to kind of like your process, right?
Well, and we took the system that we grew in the legacy market here. Okay. Right. So like I don't run drain to waste and a bunch of things like other people do. We have a custom system that we built 15 years ago when we were growing in the legacy market.
Right.
It's a mix of ebb and flow and drain to waste that runs with perlite rocks. Right.
Perlite. Okay.
Because I didn't want to have to learn compliance and all this other stuff and a new grow system.
Right.
So for now, because it was so small, we were able to just bring this in. When we expand, I'll probably go to drain to waste because of the efficiencies and things like that, because this is very labor intensive.
So is there like a whole fertigation program as well, or is it just like you individually watering the plants?
No, there's a system we pump water through and it comes to the bottom of the bucket and fills it about halfway for about 15 minutes and a set number of intervals depending on what time, what part of the phases. Yeah, it's all automated.
Yeah,
it's all gravity and some pumps that does the feeding.
Got it.
And then depending on where they're at in the life cycle, it's either 3, 4, or 6 times a day.
Got it.
And then the thing I like about it is perlite, number one, is fiberglass, right? So it's horrible for the environment. So we're dumping, thousands of pounds of this into landfills every month, right? So perlite rocks,
I thought it was
clay.
It was just like lava rocks or something.
Yeah, they're just turned into dust, right? They're totally inert. They have no impact on the environment, right? I also have instant drybacks.
What's that mean?
So a dryback is when they flood the rock wool full of water and then you let it dry out, because letting it dry out stresses the plant, which releases hormones that then turns into THC and terpenes, right? And it's tricking the plant into thinking it's dying, so it panics, releases hormones, and you're like, psych, you give it some more water, right? It's like, all right, cool. It sits there for a while and it's like, oh, it's getting dry and hot. I'm going to die, right? Yeah. So you're basically just like stressing your plant into insanity the entire time you're doing it. But for cocoa or rock wool, your thing literally has to dry out. So your environment has to your timing has to be right, and it's much more precise, and it's a lot to learn, right? With the rocks, when the water goes away, it's dry.
Right.
There's enough pores in there that the salt's sitting there so the rocks can eat, the plants can eat, where it doesn't need the wet thing, but it's under stress immediately.
Wow.
You know what I mean? For me, it was a lot easier to control my drybacks as I learned about that as we were growing in the legacy.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because how did you learn any of this stuff? Because you started in the legacy market, but like, did you have
time ago, forums?
Forums.
Like I would just go on
Future
green grass forums and like some of the older stuff.
I love Future 4200 only because they nerd out on the science side of it a lot. So I always go back to Future 4200. But
I can't even remember all of them, to be honest with you. But like, this is back when people would tell you during your flush, pour orange juice in it to make your weed taste like oranges, right? Because they would just grow like a strain that kind of tasted like oranges.
Like, that must be the orange.
Yeah, it must be the oranges. It has to be the orange juice, right? Because I mean, we didn't even know about terpenes back then.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, we didn't know, but no, we knew about bag appeal. Right. You know what I mean? That's the only thing you grew for.
Right.
Was smell and look sometimes, right? And then and the effect.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
right. Looks would come in if it was a purple or something. Yeah. They'd be like, oh my God, it's purple bud.
And that's why, like, what we grow now, because I've been growing it for so long, I tell people it's for effect. I mean, we range in TAC from 19 to 29%, but I don't ever have that conversation with people because it's not what you're smoking for.
Right.
Even when you talk to people, it's like, what effect you smoke for? I did this at Flower Expo all the time for Bud Tender Day when they would come for samples. What effect you smoke for? I smoke an indica. That's not the question I asked you at all. Yeah. So let's try this again. What effect do you smoke for? I don't know what you mean. Do you like to be sleepy? Do you like to be relaxed? Oh, I like energy in this. All right, I have a strain for that.
Right.
Because TAC isn't giving you that.
Right.
The entourage of all these things is giving you that. The terpenes, the flavonoids, all these things. So I need to know why you smoke, and then I can give you something that works for you.
Well, is that something that so if you say I want to be energized, then you have a strain for it, you said, but is it a common effect among other people that they're going to feel the same thing?
Yeah.
Or is it just anecdotal because you feel that way?
No. Like I've been growing all these strains for years, and everybody's felt that way. But
is it your OG?
Yeah, these are
genetics?
all our own genetics.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So when I was in the legacy market, I didn't understand why I had to argue with somebody where my version of Jack Hare or blueberry headband or mimosa or anything you grew back then, right, was worth $200 a pound more than somebody else's.
Right.
I thought it was the most insane argument I've ever had to have in my life. So we grew our own genetics back then. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. So, and this is something that people give me a lot of shit online for, because I won't tell anybody what's in my shit. It's none of your business. You can't replicate it. And the only people that really complain are other cultivators.
Right, not the consumer. The consumer
doesn't give a fuck.
This is great for this.
Yeah.
I got it.
And there are stores that are hype stores, right? Like, well, I can only sell something if it's got sour deals in it. Well, you're not a good partner for me, and that's great. You can run your business however you want. I don't blame them for that, but those are not consumers that I want.
Right.
Because the minute they find another hype strain, they're just moving on to something else.
Right, exactly.
I need consumers that are looking for effects.
Right.
That smoke cannabis because they're not 22 and trying to be cool, right? They're 35 and they're fucking back hurts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They have anxiety. They can't sleep. Like Gold to Sleep, one of the things we built it because Mark was an insomniac. And when we were married, he would with me when he couldn't sleep. Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah,
are you awake? Let's hang out, let's talk. So me and my buddy literally built a strain to put him to sleep so he'd leave me the alone.
That's a great way to do it.
So out
of desire.
Yeah, 100%. And I got him smoking, so it was perfect. You know, just like, here, take this.
Well, let's actually pause on that real quick, because smoking to me, because we're talking a lot about smoking and invite a lot of cultivators on here. Smoking looks so cool. I just want to participate because I'm like, just kick back, roll a joint, smoke it, whatever, and then just chill. But I'm a lightweight. I could take one puff and I'm kind of good. You know what I mean? If I
hit a ball.
Right. Or no, it's not even that though. B, my asthma came back recently, but I don't really smoke anyways, but I have exercise induced asthma now. So every time I exercise, my heart rate will spike. And the only thing that will bring it down, 210, it's as high as 215, 220 sometimes,
okay.
Depending on what I'm doing for a workout. And I'll take an inhaler and then it'll calm it down. And 30 seconds, I'll be I'm back to normal. Right. But I'd be dizzy, faintish. So I don't want to mess with my lungs any more than I have to, kind of thing in general. And so but smoking looks so cool. And it's just man, I wish I could be that person to be that smoker and be just chill and whatever. I don't know do you see there's a big market demand still? I mean, obviously flower is king, but do you see new consumers smoking? Or do you see new consumers more going towards an ingestible, an edible or something like that?
So, and I only have data from the stores that I'm in and the partners that I work with, right? I still see flower as key, but I personally believe, and the data is starting to back this, that personal infusion is going to be the wave that most people ride, right? And this is what I mean, and you're in a good place for this, and I use your product when I talk about this to people all the time. The reason alcohol works with so many people is you can dose yourself, right? You can come home and say, I just need a little bit, so I'm going to drink a Bud Light.
Right.
Or Jesus Christ, I got my ass kicked today. Here's a vodka on the rocks.
Right. Some whiskey, I guess.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Or here, I'm going to drink a glass or a bottle of wine, right? Any things like that.
Wine. I remember those days, yeah.
So if you're just talking about flower, I have to manage that through strains because I have to look for the terpenes that work, right? So now I have to have my morning flower, and I have all of this, right? Because I'm creating my morning flower. I smoke blazeberry and gold leaf in the morning. I smoke gold leaf in the midday. I smoke grizzly goo late in the day, and I smoke Gold to Sleep to go to sleep, right? Because they give different effects at different points, and I can't be all body highest at work when I have to do things, you know what I mean, and drive home still.
Right. Actually, clarify that. Did you consume this morning?
I consume in the parking lot.
So let it be known, you can be a high-functioning person and still consume cannabis.
Oh, yeah. I've consumed cannabis since I was 13 years old, and I've done more than most people will do in full fucking lifetimes.
You've had a very successful career in music and obviously a bunch of other stuff. But like, that's what the whole point of that podcast is. Like, you can also be a very high-functioning person, get a lot of shit done, and consume cannabis. It's not like crazy. It's not like we're not insane. You know what I mean? This just is a thing.
And I've also tailored my intake as I've gotten older. I don't smoke a blunt to the head every day. Every time I smoke, right? I have a bowl.
Right.
I'll take a hit or two, and I'm good for an hour.
Right.
I come back, take a hit or two. At the end of the night, I'll smoke a joint, right? But I've also learned as time goes on that I can't personally sit there and smoke 3 blunts of indica to start my day anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't function that way anymore. So that's something that I always talk to people about, and that's why I think personal infusion is really important, because you have to be able to tailor the experience to what you need in that moment, whether you're having a panic attack and need a bunch, right? Or you're just like, dude, like, just chilling. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to watch a movie and I just want to relax. So for me, the ability to dial that in back and forth is super important for new consumers as they're finding their way.
Right.
I don't ever think that edibles or all these other subcategories individually will ever take over flower. But collectively, they pretty much already have. You know what I mean?
Okay.
If you look collectively if you take everything together and
besides flower,
average it to the flower, right? In flower, I include infused pre-rolls, right? Pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls, and flower. That's like, I think 40-something% right now or something. So, I mean, everything else is still better than that.
Yeah. Well, I always consider, and I guess it depends on the store too, and I haven't looked at the data recently about the percentages, but I still, in my head, I think flower's like 70% of the market still. But I don't know. I haven't looked at the data, though. You're probably closer to the data than I am at this point. But when I think about flower, I always think to myself, it'd be cool if I could be that person, but I'm just not. I've never been built that way. Even when I was in high school and, and we were smoking bowls or someone would pass a joint around or something like that, I might take a puff or two. But I was like, first of all, I didn't feel anything, because that's what it was. It was just like weird, like, because nobody knew what it was in the thing either.
Nobody knew how you were supposed to feel, right?
Exactly. And so then I eventually stopped for so long, and then when I picked it back up again, I tried to smoke a few times, and I'm like, and then I actually got high, and I was like, oh, this is different. And then I also was just like, there's one joint, especially a 1 gram pre-roll for me, if I was to consume it that way, would literally last me an entire month probably, because I'd be able to take a single puff and I'd be like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. Which might be what some people do, of course, but when I think about bringing new customers into the cannabis market, which is, people keep on saying that the market's growing. It's growing in terms of unit sales, but revenue is flat, right?
Well, yeah, and that's because there's this huge dichotomy of micro markets in Massachusetts. Like,
micro markets. Now, this is something I think I've heard from you before.
You can't really look at Massachusetts as one market,
right?
Because every town has its own unique market. What works in Holyoke doesn't work in Somerville. What works in Somerville doesn't necessarily work in Roxbury. What works in Roxbury won't work in Taunton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can't be like, oh, it's Boston, so everything works here. No.
There's not one set pricing. Like, my pricing slides so much depending on the town and where they're at, not because I wanted to, but because that's the way the stores are reacting these days, right? And I say this a lot, and I'll say it again. There are a lot of people that own businesses in neighborhoods they don't come from. So they go in there and they just make a bunch of assumptions, and they've never owned a business before, so they don't have any failures in their past to use as use cases, to use as pivots, right? So they're like, oh, I'm in a neighborhood that I feel is relatively poor, and there's 4 people I'm competing with. Let me just be the cheapest thing on the planet, as opposed to engaging with the neighborhood, finding what the neighborhood needs, filling a hole in the neighborhood, right? Chris Vining at The Goods does an amazing job at this. I've never seen a store, and I don't know all the stores, so I'm sure there's other people, right? But Chris Vining at The Goods has Davis Square on lock. Really? They do 4 or 5 music festivals. They go above the movie theater, and they sponsor vendor nights for other businesses, and people come out and sell their stuff. And they do an amazing job at community engagement.
That's fantastic.
And then you look at some of these other stores and like, yeah, I can't even talk to my people, right? And it's like, it's a choice, because it's training,
right? Because
if you give them the easiest out, they're always going to take it,
right?
But if you engage, Not everybody's gonna, right? But it's a choice in how people choose to run their things. So that's what I mean by so many micro markets, because there's so many different, not only financially is Newton different than Lowell, right? But the store owners are all working on different levels of expertise and understanding and different goals, right? Like, not some people just want to be Walmart.
Yeah, and so if you're looking for new stores, what do you look for in a new store? Is there a specific demographic that you're always trying to target? But you just said you kind of slide depending on the area, right?
I look for stores that are engaged with their community.
Ah, that's why. Because your strains, specifically cultivars, whatever you want to call them, you kind of have that all-day experience of, wake up to bedtime routines, and you have different strains depending on the effect that you're trying to go for. So therefore, everybody can enjoy that, though. So well, not discriminating in that sense.
Yeah, and also, like, community is the only way to build sustainable support, right? Like, there's a reason you can't Google Canalive, because I don't want anybody who's looking for the best weed to Google us, because they're not a loyal customer. The minute tomorrow comes and somebody else convinces them something is better, just going to go jump buy some other stuff. Right. We want to work with stores that work with their communities, because we work with our communities.
Right.
And that's how the grant program started, and that's the start of our community engagement, is that every strain gives a grant to an artist organization. So Grizzly Goo gives a grant to Mass Bears and Cubs, which is an LGBTQ nonprofit that works with body positivity in the gay community and creates space for plus-size gay men, right? So they get a grant, they get an annual grant instead of a monthly grant, because they only need it once. So they get a grant every year. Through that, I have access now to all of the bear community in the Massachusetts market, which the gay community is a very large community. Yes. We have the most expendable cash out of any community in the country, right? And we answer to the least amount of people. Mm-hmm. So now I have the opportunity every third Sunday of the month to go to our tea dance and be in front of 200 plus people to talk about my product. Right. We just had a boat cruise last Friday with 250 captive people on the boat that I was talking to about weed. Right. So I activate these communities because I authentically belong to them, but I also understand what they need. Mm-hmm. I can fill a void there. We can give them entertainment. We give them places to feel safe. We give them places to gather and find community. Right. In return, they give me support. And that support is going to last whether they're poor or rich, because I impact their life in ways that cannabis doesn't even touch.
So do you, like, when you're approaching a new store and you found that it's the community and you like how they engage with their community, I feel like sometimes that happens to us where we have a really great engagement outside of a dispensary, but then when they go to find the product, it's not in the dispensary. Like, how do you deal with that situation where it's just like, okay, you're in, Somerville, okay, you can go to Davis Square, right, the goods. But what about in another community where you're engaging in and you're, for instance, Bears and Cubs, like, and they live in other parts of Massachusetts.
So that's what delivery's for.
Okay.
So, like, at the Mass Bears and Cubs events, I don't promote any specific dispensaries. I promote our delivery partners. Because it's people from all over the Massachusetts area. Yeah. So Rolling Relief would come out and be promoted. Zip Run gets promoted. Delivered gets promoted. When I was on the boat, we had a big QR code for Zip Run, which is our newest delivery partner. And everybody came by the table, took a picture of the Zip Run code, and they'll know how to order. So we're always going to find a way to give support, right? And I'm only going to do events in places that I can directly link support to. Rooted In isn't too far from Club Cafe, so we also bring them in sometimes and give callback cards to go back and get 10% off or whatever thing that we're doing, right? So for me, it's always about, does the store care, right? Because then the store has conversations with their people. The store works with their people. I don't have to do a pop-up and just watch somebody come in and be like, highest tax, cheapest price, please. And I've been in stores where they do this, right? And the person's like, sure, right? And
that's a fun line.
Yeah. And
highest tax, lowest price, come and forget it.
Do you even know what they're here for, right? Like, so for me, again, like, anybody can run the store any way they want. I don't mean to tell people how to do their business. I just know how I like to do business. Right. And I look for people that do business similar to me.
Right. That makes a lot of sense because exactly. Again, those core life lessons where you're just like, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about me because I'm going to focus on my goals and what I'm going to try to accomplish, and I'm going to work with people that I like to work with and I want to work with. So delivery obviously being very important, but you did mention discount, but was that a slip, promotion, discount? Like, how do you kind of, because we were obviously talking about compliance regulations too. Discounting is like a bad word. And
so the callback card basically is like, go here and you can support these people. right? And then whatever they run internally, like they run internally. You know what I mean? So the card is always like, if you want to support Can Alive and Mass Bears and Cubs, or you want to support Brandy Blaze, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Callback card just gives them a place to go.
Okay.
And then whatever they run internally, I can't talk about, you can't talk about. They can only talk about it at the register.
Right.
But stores have ways that they work with people and make sure that everybody walks away happy. You know what I mean?
Well, do you run like email marketing or anything like that? Do you have like email list? So it's literally just boots in the ground is your number one marketing strategy. Is there anything else besides boots in the ground? No, that's it.
See, and this is
What I
another
mean by
reason
boots
why.
in the ground is community.
Yeah. This is another reason why we started small, right? Because all the while I was going through a license, people were telling me what I couldn't do. You can't run a cannabis business without a website. You can't run a cannabis business selling your own strains. You can't run a cannabis business with strains under 30%. You can't do this. I've done every one of those things with success.
Now, are you holding off on a website because of being stubborn and prideful?
I was petty for the first year. Now we're actually working on one, but I needed to be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I needed
not going to throw something up.
Yeah,
like, hey, we got a website.
Yeah. It's got to be slick. It's got to work the way I want it to work. It's got to support the things that we want to promote. It's got to be less about the cannabis and more about the community. Because again, we're, if you know, brand. Supreme didn't market with emails. Supreme did a drop and people showed the up. Right. And not saying that I'm Supreme, right? But there's space for those kinds of things. Martell doesn't send out emails to people. You know what I mean? Cartier doesn't send out emails to people. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody works like we're just supposed to be this. And honestly, from working in the music business for 30 years, nobody reads those emails anyways.
Right.
We all moved off of emails 10 years ago in the music industry, on the Discords and other ways to engage with people.
Well, yeah, I was gonna
nobody
say,
reads emails.
Are there other forms of marketing that you potentially look at, like social media or anything like that? Or
I market our events on social media more than I market cannabis because I like to keep my accounts.
Makes sense.
You
start
can't
mentioning cannabis.
you can't take my account away when I say come to Mass Bears and Cups.
Right.
You can't take my account away when I say come to the makeup pop-up that we're doing. Right.
That's
like with Brandy, one of the things we do, we bring a makeup artist out and we do a 2-hour pop-up with a makeup artist in the store. Right. We did that at Rooted In. 7 makeovers in 2 hours, including a trans woman who had never had professional makeup done before.
Wow.
So the community touch that you get out of these things is unparalleled. Yeah. All of them are on social media talking about it. All of them went and told their friends.
Right. That's great word of mouth, right?
And that's why I don't word of mouth is always like, if you ever talk to anybody who's been in sales longer than like 2020, like repeat and referral business is the only thing you care about.
Right.
All the other stuff just drives you to repeat and referral business.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing that carries value.
Right.
When your friend tells you this is good, it's way better than when a TV commercial.
Or you have an email marketing.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, this is good. And you're like, okay, sure it is.
Of course you have to tell me.
Yeah,
that,
you
right?
have to say that. You can't be like, it's bad.
Yeah, your friend who gave you the last 3 songs that you love is like, yo, bro, this smoke this. You know what I mean? This changed my life. I feel great.
Right.
My anxiety's gone. You know what I mean? Like, whatever the case may be, that's what we want. We want people excited about, when Yamba Market was open, rest in peace, we really had RuPaul drag races every Friday there, watch parties, because there's no gay bar in that neighborhood. So those college kids and the young people who don't have the resource to go out and have their own community had a place to have community.
Interesting. So that was their third place. What about, Yamba, like, why is it so hard to succeed in Cambridge? Or like Harvard Square even? Like, what's going on?
I can't really tell you why Yamba failed because it's not my place, right?
Of course, no, but I'm like, why is it hard to, like,
I don't really feel like
it's audience there, but like,
it's not
that transient, I guess, because it's college kids coming and going.
I mean, I don't, other than Rev and Yamba, like everybody else is doing fine.
Okay.
Right. And Rev collapsed on their own and Yamba collapsed for reasons that had nothing to do with that. Right. But Central Square is a great location because you have a variety of people from a variety of backgrounds all coming there. There's restaurants, the Middle East is right there. Like there's all these things. So it's always going to be a busy place. Everybody else is doing well. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't really think, I think dispensaries struggle due to internal reasons.
Right.
Not due to neighborhood reasons.
Well,
right.
Bad business practices.
Bad over leverage, bad business practices, not doing enough to bring people in the door, only getting people in the door for sales. You know
I think that's one of the things that sometimes we'll get dispensaries calling us being like, hey, you gotta have a pop-up here. We want you guys to drive like more traffic to our stores. I'm like, well, how's that? Like, I guess we could have some role in that, but like if you already don't have the traffic there, if we show up for a pop-up, for instance, because we still have the field marketing team, and 3 people show up in those 2 hours, it's like we just spent all that money and effort to go, all resources to go to this pop-up, and we saw 3 people. But they sometimes say like, we need a pop-up for you because, and maybe it's an internal struggle on their end because they don't know how to bring more people in themselves.
Yeah, and I feel like people look at pop-ups for different reasons. There are people who look at pop-ups like, I need you to bring people in. And it's like, we work with that with the grants, right? And that's why we spread it out.
Well, then you can do, but if you're doing an event, I get that, because now you're actually drawing people to do
But even with the grants, right? Like when Zofredo launches, right? Which is our new strain that's launching this time with Dutch Rebels grant. Rooted In is actually getting the first shipment of it. They'll have it like Tuesday, right? So they'll have it for Juneteenth.
Awesome.
So we'll be able to... Yeah.
Excellent.
So we'll be able to tell all of her fans, the only place you can get it right now is here.
Rooted In.
So we're able to drive a little bit of traffic, right, through that. It's hard to drive traffic on pop-ups because who can come down and like, there's got to be a reason for them to come down and see you in the pop-up.
From like 3 to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
so if you're giving away like an exclusive t-shirt,
Right.
you know, and there's something that you invest a lot of money into, yeah, you can get people down. Right. But for me, like, I think the whole pop-up thing is completely overrated, if I'm being real honest. Like, we're supposed to be truthful here, right? I'm just
100%.
So
I tell people all the time.
Pop-ups are fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And here's 2 reasons why. One reason why. How do you feel when you walk into Foot Locker and the guy's like, you want to buy some sneakers?
I'd be like, get out of my face.
Right. So how do you think
I'm gonna
people
go browse
feel,
over here.
How do you think people feel when they walk into a dispensary and somebody's like, you want to buy some weed?
Right. Exactly.
Clearly, I want to buy some weed.
I'm here buying
right?
fucking weed. Yeah.
So we try not to do informational pop-ups like that. We will if we do. Kyle does wonderful at them. Carlos does wonderful at them.
But you get those dispensaries who are very needy, and they're like, you got to come out in the first 2 weeks after delivery. Or...
What we'll do instead is I will tell them I need your busiest day, Friday, Saturday, whatever it is. I'll send a DJ for 2 hours.
Oh.
I'll send a jazz musician for 2 hours. I'll send a spoken word artist for 2 hours. I'll send an R&B artist for 2 hours. I'll send a puppy adoption place.
Yeah.
I want to change the environment.
Right.
I want to change the experience. So when somebody comes in, it's different.
Gotcha.
And they have to ask, what's going on?
Right.
Because now the conversation isn't me asking them to talk to me. The conversation is I'm asking a bud tender, what the fuck is this? And then coming over like, yo. So now I have completely changed the power dynamic of that interaction because I'm not begging for it. They're bringing it to me.
Right.
So now they're interested. So now I can have a conversation with them. And even if they're not, right, even if they don't come over, right, let's say they ordered on the phone, right, or ordered online and they come in, right, the environment is it. They're like, they might have heard their favorite song. They might have been in a really mood and we have a reggae DJ and reggae music or house music or whatever playing puts them in a great mood, right?
Right.
That is what I talk about with identity seeding because it has nothing to do with cannabis. I changed their day.
Yeah.
So they're going to remember that the next time they hear that song. Right. Oh, I just heard that. The next time they look at products. No, it might take 2 or 3 touches, but that's how you seed identity. Because when it has nothing to do with cannabis, when they're sad and that song comes on again or whatever, subconsciously it tags back to us.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. How many stores are you in right now?
When we're live, usually about 17 to 20.
17 to 20. And what's your capacity, you think?
We'll probably get up to about 35 or 40 right now.
And at 35, 40, you can handle a 400 square foot veg, 400 square foot flower room kind of thing?
Oh, well,
how are you doing it typically?
Well, no. So with the advent of LED lights, I don't understand why anybody moves a fucking plant past planting it. Because
so you just have
it's just labor and stress.
Then, or
so like, we grow the same thing. So I have 96 plants in this room, 96 plants in this room. It's the same split every time.
Oh,
each grant gets 24 plants because there's 4 grants and there's 4 rows of 24. Still Gold's grant gets 2 strain, Gold Leaf and Gold to Sleep, because Gold Leaf has been on the market a while. So I brought him another one to cut availability of that. Dutch has 24 plants. Brandy has 24 plants. Asperger's and Cubs have 24 plants.
How you organize your room is based on the grants.
Yep.
Wow.
So we're actually working another strain out of the vault in our development room right now that we're going to grow again to see how we feel about it. And I'm going to introduce it into a genetic loop, the next plant. And that once we see what it is and talk to the grantees and decide who's going to get it, that'll replace one of those 12 rows with another strain. So we don't have to expand and keep bringing strains out, because I constantly want to make sure that we're bringing more strains out, because I like only having 6 or 7 pounds of a strain.
Right.
because it makes it very exclusive.
Right,
And
exactly.
it makes it so when stores sell out,
You can only
people
get
ask
it.
for it.
Yeah, you can only get that and when it's there. And if you don't get it, then you missed and you get it. So it's like basically like a Supreme drop.
Yeah.
In a sense, yeah.
It's like a limited edition anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I use this example all the time too. 2022 in the music industry, I believe the year was, $297,000 was spent on merchandise cassette tapes to people who don't own cassette players because the identity the band gives them makes them feel better.
I don't know.
Stop telling me people won't buy $30 pot. Not you,
Right.
but people in general.
Yeah. No,
People are
because if
literally buying
don't even have
cassettes and
cassettes,
don't have
cassette player.
No, who makes a cassette player anymore? Nobody.
Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Sometimes.
Like, yeah,
Fair, but
and like I think there's like a high end one that just came out for like $9,000.
I was actually thinking about it getting like a Walkman again because I was like, just having a Walkman, like a physical like play button, and you have to rewind it to get to that song again or whatever you want to play it. Like there's that physical.
There's
thing I
that
miss
touch.
on this.
Yeah. And then you go too far, you got, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of those are things, are memories that we work with, right? So when we talk about identity seeding, and that's why we do DJs.
Right.
Because it's an easy lift to bring a happy moment to somebody.
Got it.
And we cater to DJ to the environment. Like,
Sure.
I'm not going to send a Latino DJ to a white rock neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to figure those parts out. And it's easy to figure out where we should send spoken word and that, because that's why we work with the stores. What's your community like?
Right. Do you go to the stores and also check them out to like?
Yeah, I'll usually do the first pop-up as an informational pop-up right after we launch with every store I can, right? So that I can see the store if I haven't had a chance to get down there and talk to the people in person. So I can get a feel for what the neighborhood is like, what I think will work in that area, what we can even do with the space, because every store isn't built the same.
Right.
I can't do a makeup artist event if you only have this much space for a pop-up.
Yeah, it's weird because you get sometimes pushed into weird corners. We're like, well, no one's even going to see us over here.
Yep.
It's like, why did we even come here?
Yeah, and that's the other thing that irks me. It's like there's a lot of stores that don't put any thought into the arrangement of a store.
Right.
So they're either oversized and have all this cavernous space, right? And it's like, of course you're losing money because you don't have people generating revenue in all of this space.
Right.
You have displays that barely even work as displays, or they're too small and you can't do anything.
Do you do displays?
So we give them packaging
Okay.
to do whatever they want within their store.
Have you run into the issues with like slotting fees or anything like that yet?
No, because I firmly believe everybody knows better than to tell me that.
Yeah. If they know you,
Firmly
they know not to
believe
ask.
everybody knows better than to tell me that. Because I just will.
Yeah, there's no chance.
Like,
Well, I think about it as, because again, dispensaries are always trying to find more ways to squeeze the lemon. You know what I mean? Just like get a little bit of juice out of it. And I've been hearing more about slotting fees, being like, hey, if you want to have our display in the store, it's like $500 a month.
So then I need a $10,000 a month order.
Exactly. You want to put a $10,000 a month order in, sure,
Yeah.
go for it.
So if you want to put a $10,000 a month order in, I'll give you a $500 credit if I have X, Y, Z is easy, right? And I wouldn't even do that. I'm just making up as an example. Because at the end of the day, if that's what it takes to keep your store profitable, I'm not going to.
I know you sign.
Yeah, you're not going to be around for a long time, right? And I'm not going to do well in there.
And at some point, you're going to owe us money, and I'm going to be hunting you down. You're going to be ghosting me, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to hear you're in receivership.
And I'm going to be honest with you, right? Like, we don't have an AR issue. I issued 176 invoices so far. 175 have been paid.
Wow. Are you COD, net terms, anything?
Both.
And it just depends on the relationship, and they are always everybody's paying.
Everybody. Now, some people paid late.
Yeah.
Right? I won't say everybody's paid on time, but I've never had to hound anybody for money.
That's good.
They've always had an explanation.
Yeah.
But I work really hard to make sure of that.
Right.
We're in the stores multiple times. We're helping them as much as we can. Like when last summer, Mellow up in Haverhill, they have that porch.
Yep.
We programmed all the music on that porch for the summer.
A lot.
So we bring a lot to the table to make sure that people have to keep us in.
I'm not going to lie. You said Haverhill perfectly. As a person from Chicago, California, in your previous background, people will still say like Haverhill and stuff like that.
I did until I moved here.
I was going to say, because that's almost like a clear giveaway that you're like a native now. Because it's like, he said Haverhill. Like, he's one of us. You know what I mean?
Before I moved, we were looking at places to live there, and I would call my friends and like, "Where's Haverhill?" Like, I don't know what the you're talking, because it didn't even dawn on them that I was saying it wrong. It was like, we don't have a town here like that.
Yeah.
And finally, I would email somebody like, "Oh, that's Haverhill."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right." And then you would see for a while the videos on Facebook where everybody making
Part of it,
pronounce here, and
Yeah, because I think about that because I could have sworn you were born and raised here before I knew that you had all this whole background in other states and stuff like that. Because I was like, so you sound like you're from Massachusetts at this point.
I appreciate
You don't have the thick accent.
Yeah.
But I also don't either. I dropped my accent when I moved to New York City.
A lot of people here
But,
don't
like,
have that accent.
yeah,
I know
just-
so many people that are born and raised here that don't
Just don't have it,
accent.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Eventually, you know, I did have it at one point, and if I'm tired enough, it'll come out. I'll start dropping my R's, you know.
My New York accent
R's
comes out
into
a lot.
random spots.
So as if I drink,
yeah,
car, call, you know what I mean? It'll start coming out after a while.
Well, I still remember. I tell this to my kids all the time. Because weirdly enough, my son has like a Brooklyn accent-ish sometimes, but he was born in Brooklyn though. And we're going to we're heading back to New York City in like a week or two.
Oh,
Can't
dope.
wait to go back and you know visit some friends. But I still remember my grandmother. They would add an R to a lot of things, so she would say "idea."
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
what? I was thinking back, I'm like, that was just normal back then, and just be like, wow, that was so strange if you think back to those days. All right, we're about to wrap here, but like, anything that we didn't cover that you want to get out right now? Can anybody else get a grant? Like, how did the grant system work? Actually, can you clarify that?
Yeah, so...
Can a company come to you be like, hey, I want to buy one of these grants?
No. The grants are given by me based on the value that I don't even want to say value, that's the wrong word. The grants are given by me based on the need I feel that the grantee has and the community that they bring to the table, right? And that's why I always work in communities that I know. That's why there's no rock and roll grant. I don't have a rock band. I don't know the community at all. I don't know how to activate them. I don't sit authentically in it. So it would be something that would be a huge failure for us because I wouldn't be able to give all of the things that the grant is supposed to bring to the table because I don't understand that community.
Yeah, authenticity is a big component.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Right. And there is no truth without authenticity. Right. And people can smell
right
through
through
it 100%. Right. And that's why so many of these stores and cultivators and everything are struggling because they're sitting in spaces they don't belong in.
Wow.
And they're trying to be things that they're not. Right. And I've told this to people. Who
I know, you're like the truth teller. You shut up
Like-
from the mountaintop being like, this is not going to work the way you think it's going to work.
It just isn't. Right. And if everybody could just swallow their pride and shrink a little bit, we'd all be fine. Right.
Yeah.
I know people who AR issue, but they gave people 5 orders on credit. The f is wrong with you?
Yeah.
They didn't pay you for the first one? That's their fault.
That's-
the other 4 are
on
your fault. You force a brand new store to take $100,000 order, that's your fault.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody wants to own up to the shit that they do. Everybody's like, oh, no. A vast majority of these things, if you look into them, people made them happen themselves. They didn't have to be that way.
Right.
But it's better to chase money than leave it in the vault. Go pitch that to an investor
Right.
as your business model.
Right.
I'm just going to chase money. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, so I don't understand a lot of this because people aren't running businesses. They're running ego factories. They get to walk around to these industry parties and be cool with everybody. That's why I don't go to
walk.
I'll go to the Wiedeker ones because those are great, but I don't go to a lot of industry parties because I don't understand patting yourself on the back for losing money. I don't understand going to all these conferences out of town when you owe people money.
In
In mass. And you're not coming back with checks. You're coming back with pictures, hanging out with your friends.
Right. You do see a lot of that, and I that does rub me the wrong way as well. When I know that person owes me money, and I'm like, you're in Vegas for MJ Biz, like,
Right.
You have a one store in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
What do you like? Are you expanding to like before? Again, it just rubs me the wrong way all the time, and I'm sure it does rub a lot of people the wrong way, because that just sounds fiscally irresponsible from just a business standpoint of like how to run a business.
And there's tons of great companies here. Like, I don't want to besmirch
Of
the whole
course,
market.
this is
There's
supposed to be a
ton of
positive
great-
aspect to it too.
Great companies here. And I always want to end with that, right? I love this market. I think there's a lot of great potential. I just think there's a lot of goofballs in it,
Yeah.
right? And coming from music where it's goofball central, right? Because everybody thinks they can be a record executive, right? It's real easy to point them out. So, like, I'm just goofball free, or I try to be, right? I try to be my own goofball.
Yeah, you could be your own group.
Yeah, because,
can own
like,
that.
I don't understand replicating things that are failing.
Yeah. And doing it repeatedly and thinking it's going to somehow change.
You know what I mean? So I really feel like if people took a lot more personal responsibility over the shit they were doing,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that own cultivation companies that don't touch their plants. What's wrong with you?
Right. Right.
But you want to complain that you're not making money. You know what I mean? So like, you can't have it both ways, unfortunately, in cannabis.
Yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to the owner.
Yeah.
That's on you.
You've got to run it from the top down. And I make tons of mistakes every day, right? I don't want to sound like I'm perfect, but I try to learn as much as I can from them and pivot in a way that is beneficial to everybody else.
Right. Appreciate that. Any last closing words? No website.
Don't shoot the messenger. No, but all jokes aside, like I am appreciative of the opportunity that everybody gives me in this industry. I think this industry is filled with wonderful people. I think we are going to have an amazing year this year. Unfortunately, there will be some people that get left behind, right? But if we can band together and really talk about what we want out of this, right? And then stop nickel and diming everybody to death and really create an industry that works for everybody, we're all going to do well.
Yeah.
Right? It just has to make sense. And you can't sit here and put all the profit in the stores and tell cultivators that all I can give you is $8 an eighth when I sell it for $40, right? And then get mad, right? You can't come to me and tell me you want to pay me $400 for a pound to sell in a deli bar for $40, right? It has to be equitable.
Right.
So if everybody could just work on a little bit being better to everybody, this would be way better to do.
All right. Fantastic. We can wrap with that. Thank you so much for your time, Todd.
No, thank you, sir. This has been great.